Oh, we're live.
We're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the panel. Apologies for being late. We normally turn up at 12 o'clock every single day, every single Wednesday. However, we had some tech issues. So we are about 15 minutes late. However, we are here with a very interesting topic. First and foremost, I want to say welcome to Elizabeth Carly Leonard. Hello, darling.
Hello.
Hello. Do you want to tell everybody what you do?
So I am Elizabeth, and I'm the founder of a social media agency called Vibes and Visibility, where we help basically anyone who's not a dickhead show up constantly and consistently online. And we mainly do that by creating 3 months of content in a day for them.
Love it. Love it. And I love what you're creating. It's absolutely gorgeous. The three of us were actually at the Big Festoon last week, which is probably why I sound a lot deeper than normal because I'm still recovering. Yes, and it was just good to see everybody. Hello, Rochelle.
Hello. I've just tagged you both. I couldn't find Elizabeth because I was spelling it with a Z when it's right in front of me that it's with an S.
We're in for a ride today, guys. We're in for a ride. So, Rochelle, do you want to tell everybody what you do?
So what do? I have a property business where I build property portfolios for other people, and I also teach people how to get visible on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. And my name is Victoria Dioh, and I help you fall in love with your life by using intuitive tools and techniques. Now, today we're talking about accents. As you can tell, we've all got very different accents. And I don't know what made me think of this topic, to be fair. Normally, so we have a group and I post ideas in, and the girls just look at it and then carry on with the days. And then when it comes to a speaking, they go, "What are we talking about again?" So this is one of those. I think the reason why I put it up is because there's so many people who've got different accents. And actually, there was somebody talking about how their perception of somebody's accent would determine whether they thought that person was intelligent or not.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now I could find you the person's name. He is a well-known voice. Is he a voice coach? He's a voice. Is he a voice coach or a speaking coach? But he was talking to Stephen Bartlett. I think that's what made me think about it, and I was like, "That's really interesting." So he's basically teaching you how to speak, almost like with a diluted accent, as opposed to, having your, I don't know, your hereditary.
Yeah, like your
natural voice.
Yeah, what do you think? I'm intrigued. Thoughts?
I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's funny you should say that. If people think that you're less intelligent if you've got an accent, because I was at dinner recently with James, my other half, the food bringer of the Big Festoon for you.
Amen. Beautiful.
And a lot of his family are from like proper London. Like his grandparents were friends with the Cray twins, sort of like proper London. And his uncle was there, and he's the most Cockney person I've ever met in my life. And he's very much like Jack the Lad sort of energy. He's in his, I think he's in his 60s or 70s. And I thought it was all going to be sort of like banter, sports, football, that kind of stuff that was coming out of his mouth. completely out of my comfort zone with this. And then he starts talking to me about really high-end culinary experiences, and that he loves cooking and he used to run a restaurant, and he's speaking about all of these amazing Spanish dishes. And I grew up for a few years out in Spain. So a lot of the things he was talking about are so far removed from my initial perception of him. But it was also kind of a little bit funny to me hearing him talk about these things, but with this thick Cockney accent. And I said to James, I really did not expect all of that to come out of his mouth, like at all. So there is something to it there. I didn't go in there with any sort of like negative prejudice. it just caught me off guard a bit that he was talking about fine dining experiences in southern Spain.
So the speaker, I've just done some research. The speaker is called Vingyang. I must say I love the way he speaks. That he did an interview, and I only caught a clip, but it made me think this is really interesting because you get people, especially people say from Africa, where you've got an African accent. I think in some ways these people are really underestimated because of their accent. It's almost like because you don't speak with the Queen's English or the Queen's accent that you're less intelligent. And I'm wondering if those of you who are listening, I'm wondering if at some point you've found yourself maybe being prejudiced towards someone like that. And it doesn't have to be conscious. It could be completely subconscious, or maybe it's someone who comes in and you think, oh, I don't like their accent, I'm not going to give them the job, and you don't even think about it. You just think, oh, they're not going to fit in with the rest of us because we're all well spoken, which I don't believe anybody really is, to be fair. Rochelle, what do you think?
So I think when you're growing up and you're young, you don't really notice your accent very much. And I can remember the first time that I realised I was Northern. I did karate as a teenager, and I went to karate camp, and there was so I'm from Sheffield, and there were kids from all over the country. There were quite a lot from like Northampton, Peterborough, and they were just like, I'd say something like snow and no, and then they'd start laughing and thinking it was funny, and I was like, oh really? And it was like light-hearted and humor, but at the same time it makes you a little bit self-conscious of then speaking to people. So I know now that I'm speaking on lots of stages and I'm traveling around the country, and I've done a lot of speaking down south, and I do feel more conscious of like how I'm coming across and making sure that they can understand me. And like I don't mind the banter. Everyone has a bit of banter around different accents and things, but it's just making sure that I don't feel like it's at my expense, or because they feel like I'm not intelligent and that's why I sound like this. I just sound like this because of where I'm from. It's got nothing to do with how much information I store in my brain or anything like that. And then I think when I went to university again, it's like when you've got all that like that mixture of different pots of different accents. I think it's exciting. It's interesting, but I think people definitely do judge you. Elizabeth, I think you sound very fancy. Like I feel, especially compared to me, you've got a very fancy accent, and I love it. But once we were in Vegas. When was it, 2019, and we were talking to an American lady, and she was telling me and all my Yorkshire friends that we sounded so fancy, and she loved that. We have never been called fancy before. This is not a fancy accent. And I would love to know how I sound to other people. Like it's crazy.
Isn't that so funny though, that different can come across as fancy or not? And so it's like just depending on where you are. I remember going to New Orleans a few years ago before the disaster in New Orleans, and we went there for the Jazz Fest. And whilst we're there and stuff, it's like, massive park, 5-day event. It was amazing. And I just walked around doing my thing, talking to people and what have you. And there were these group of women, and they were like, your accent funny. Say that again. Say that again. And I was almost like this puppet for their sort of like entertainment. They're like, say that again. You funny. You funny. And the dancer just kept on saying that. And I was like, I didn't realize how much the accent is. But what's really interesting is I was born in, I just think where I was born then. I was born in Leeds. So sometimes you might get the Leeds accent. And then I spent 12 years of my life in Cameroon. So imagine me taking that accent, the Leeds accent, and going to Cameroon. So never fitted in at all. Even when I tried to learn the broken English, it never quite worked. And then I went from Leeds went back from Cameroon to Leeds. and I must have picked up a couple of twangs from Africa, blending it again with the Leeds accent, and then now moving back and then moving to London. And all it takes for me is to go up north for a few days, and I have no hope. I have no hope whatsoever.
Were you speaking in Northern by the end of the big festoon then?
Do you know what? I don't think I was speaking Northern, and I'll tell you why. Because I didn't speak to many people. Because I was so engrossed doing a lot of healings. I wasn't engaged much in speaking. But if I'd have gone and just been part of the actual event and spoken to loads of people, oh yeah, you like literally coming to London and people like they used to be, when I used to socialize a lot more than I do now. I'd come back, go to the pub, and people just look at me and go, "Have you been up north?" They just look at me like, and they'd look at me with total disdain, like, "Have you been up north?" And I go, "Yeah." They went, "Yeah, you can tell." So, like literally, it's that look, and then eventually the accent will go. But I think I have purposely made sure that people can understand me. So I think I've gone more neutral, and it's not. I don't think it was necessarily deliberate, but I think I was very aware that when I was, especially from Cameroon, I was very aware that a lot of people don't understand Africans when they speak and stuff. And I'm not, and listen, it's changed a lot now, but I was very aware of that. So I made sure that I opened my mouth when I speak. And when I open my mouth, then obviously a different sound comes out more than anything else. And then it's just become a thing. But you'll never take the Yorkshire out of me. I mean, I'm a born and half bred Yorkshire lass. It'll never change.
It's funny you should say that about being really aware of your mouth movements. And that Rochelle, you said I've got a fancy accent. I do. I have a weird accent though.
You do.
It's a boarding school, so it's a mixture of like posh British, but then a lot of my roommates were American. And when you're young, you just absorb things like a sponge. So I flip between the two. Even though I'm from Leicester, it is I'm really bad at accents. I need to stop. But you know, a lot of people like they mock me. They call me the posh one. And they think that they have misconceptions and perceptions based on my accent, as you would for, I guess, somebody with a less posh accent. And they think that I'm like a multimillionaire and I've got a pony and a stately home and all of those things. When in reality, my family was one of the ones that we lost everything in the recession. And all that I was left with was a stupid fucking accent. But they do have these perceptions of things. But when I was younger, pre-recession, what we were well off, but a lot of us had elocution lessons. So it wasn't like this was our natural voice and we just picked this up. We were taught how to speak properly and how to hold ourselves. I had etiquette lessons. I got taught how to eat peas properly, for God's sake. I don't do it now because it's such a redundant way of eating peas, but it's crazy. And it just goes to show you that these things can be really trained into you from such a young age, but then you're sort of stuck with it, aren't you? And I guess the posh accent basically comes from people being taught how to be posh from a age. It's ridiculous.
And I'm so glad you're sharing this story, because it's so funny. I was watching the Royals the other day. I can't remember doing what, but I was like, they get taught everything. Like literally, you have to have like elocution lessons, that you have to turn up on time and get taught how to speak, how to enunciate, how to speak on stage and everything else. And I just want to say, anybody that's out there thinking that they're not good enough, that they don't sound like somebody else, it's because that person has learned how to be like that. And no
lessons.
Like lessons, and no judgment. If you want to talk like that, go learn how to talk like that. And if you don't want to talk like that, don't learn how to talk like that. Now, here's a question. Do you feel as if, so Rochelle, do you feel it is your responsibility to speak so that other people can understand? Or do you think that, as you are speaking on stage, that it is their job to pay attention to you and just figure out your accent?
Good question. I think it is a bit of both. So a little story here. My other half, Chris, he's from Mansfield, but he was brought up in Sheffield, which for most people,
Poor lad.
quite close together, but the accents are quite different.
So different, yeah.
So he's got like a muddled accent. And when we were on holiday a couple of years ago in Rhodes, and we were speaking to some people from Kent, and I had to act as a translator for him because he couldn't understand what he was saying, and he's from the same country. And
I love that.
And sometimes, like with the Sky remote, you can speak into it and say like what TV program you want to come up. Sky does not understand what Chris is saying. Like it just does not understand his voice.
Okay.
I think it's hilarious, but obviously it can be quite frustrating for him. And he's from England, so I can imagine like for people who are from foreign countries and they've learned English as the second language, it can be quite frustrating trying to get themselves across and trying to I suppose like the thinking in the brain in a different language a lot of the time, and then having to translate it and getting it out to us. And I think people just have to be more patient and not be afraid to ask, sorry, I don't understand what you're saying or what you've just said. I don't understand that phrase that you've just used, because we don't use that where we're from. So I think it's more about asking questions. I think sometimes we probably do need to slow down. So that was another thing that I noticed when we were on holiday. It was in Thailand actually, and we noticed that lots of people were talking to each other in English, and English wasn't their first language, but like one person was say German and one person was Thai, and they were having a very good conversation. But then when we spoke to them, they couldn't understand what we were saying, and it was frustrating. But we realized it was because we speak so fast and all the words roll into one. So I think we do have a certain responsibility to be aware of that and to slow down how quickly we're speaking so that other people can get a grasp. And I suppose it's an effective way of communicating rather than just assuming that everyone should understand what it is that we're saying. So both sides, definitely.
So Elizabeth, I mean, let's face it, right? It's like you sound posh, your name sounds posh, and so like you basically screwed.
He's like a posh person.
Yeah, it's like a posh, but you know how to eat peas and everything else. Apart from the perception of wealth, what have been the most what's the word, misconceptions about you that you think are connected to your accent?
Well, I use any misconceptions to my advantage. Probably shouldn't say this publicly because it's like a little secret, but like, the whole sounding a lot posher and richer than I am, I use it to get me into rooms because a lot of people do have these unconscious biases. Well, sometimes they're conscious, aren't they? But that allows me to get into rooms and be in like almost like a camouflage, so people think that I'm like one of their own. And then on the flip side, when I get really excitable, more of the American twanginess tends to come out, and then people can see me as a ditzy blonde. And it drives my other half insane because he goes, that person thinks you're stupid. I'm like, yeah, isn't it great? And he goes, you're aware? I go, yeah, isn't it great? And he goes, why is it great? And I went, because they're underestimating me right now. And I use that when either I'm in a really boring conversation with some finance bro that I just don't want to be involved in, especially like a mansplain. I'm like, that's so interesting. You know how to make money. And then he just leaves me alone. Or if I want to find something out from somebody who's being dead cagey, I will then play the dumb blonde role completely. They'll tell me everything I need to know, and then I'm on my merry way. So again, I think you should never judge a book by its cover, no matter which angle you're coming from, because you never know what somebody is truly like until you take the time to get to know them, instead of just judging them by what comes out of their mouth. I mean, I think it's brilliant. Drives James insane that people think I'm stupid sometimes, but I think it's a secret weapon, personally.
The lovely James. So I'm so glad that you talked about using it at your advantage. So I have used my accent to my advantage a lot of the time. So first and foremost, whether we like it or not, racism exists. Is it preconceptions or preconceptions, whatever we're trying to say. But people see you and they go, So when I turn up at events, I enunciate so well, and obviously I'm very intelligent, so I blend the two, and I always get my way. Like literally, I will ask and I will speak my way to what I want to get, whether I have met them or not. If I'm on the phone and I'm trying to get something resolved, I will speak so well, and I use the whole mirroring thing so that eventually they go, let's see what we can do for you. I've been on calls where they've gone, no, we can't help you, and they've ended up going, do you know what? We'll solve it. We'll give you this for free. We'll even come and see you if we need to and stuff. We will do whatever you need. And I believe that's because here's my belief. I believe that if I used a Leeds accent, then they'll perceive me to be not that intelligent or kind of okay. I believe that if I use my African accent, they'll be like, well, that's a black person on the phone and stuff. Why should I bother? And I'm not saying this for everybody. I'm just saying as a general misconception. But I believe that when you use a neutral way of speaking, the other person, if they're not as well spoken, they kind of feel as if they have to up their game. Or if they're already at that level, then they feel like they've met their equal. And stuff. So either way, you can't lose, and what have you. So I love that whole thing, and it's really funny because I've met people where I've gone very well spoken, and again, it's not intentional; it just happens where I'll speak in a certain way, and then maybe after I've relaxed, the Yorkshire lass starts coming out, and they go, your accent's changed. They go, your accent's changed. I went, oh yeah, that's just my relaxed accent. Like it's not my Yorkshire accent isn't the accent I wake up with. If you wake me up in bed, I speak like this. But if eventually as I sort of like start to go stuff like, ah yeah, you're right. How are you? So, like round where I live, people that have known me for a long time, when they see me, they go, hiya love, because that's how I used to speak to people. I'd go, hiya love, how are you? And then start speaking in the straight accent again. So it's really funny. But I think the message is do not misjudge people and don't underestimate people and I think the what's the word? The personal development world has made it a bit easier because you've got people who are doing incredible things from all over the world. So it's I'm trying to think of. I think there's a guy called. Now I'm going to get his name wrong. Now, is it Andrew Samuel or something or Samuel something and stuff? And I know he's married to a black woman, but he's in property, and I think he's from Leeds. Samuel Leeds. There you go. See, he's not from Leeds. He might not be from Leeds, but there you go. But it's like he's got a northern accent, hasn't he? And stuff like he's very much sort of like. Has he got a northern accent?
Yeah, he's the property guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Property guy. Yeah.
I saw him speak, and I found him quite jarring, but not because of his accent. I just wasn't my vibe at all.
Very Marmite.
Yeah.
So I can't say I like him or not. What I can say is when I hear his accent, I think he's from up north. I don't think. Do you know what I mean? I don't know it. I've seen him. He's married to a black woman. So, but that's all I know. But I know that if I hear him speak, I go, he's one of us. Like,
yeah,
he's not a God. I'm trying to think of someone who's well spoken now, and he escapes me. But even like Nick James. James is a Brummy guy, you know what I mean? He's a Brummy guy. So all of us, and again, I think the Brummies have even a worse deal out of this and stuff because I remember going through Birmingham years ago. This is a long time ago, but I remember going through Birmingham and I was like, please, nobody talk to me. Nobody talk to me. Nobody talk to me. I was just like, I don't think I can handle the accent. I don't think I can handle the accent. And I know, and I'm not proud of it, but I was, and this was before everything went all woke and everything else. But the accent was just like, it just grated inside you. But I think TV has done a really good job as well by putting Birmingham people on TV, where now the accent has just become a thing and stuff. Like, I mean, I love the Geordie accent. I like literally, you can speak to me from Geordie or from Liverpool all day. I don't care what you say. I'll say yes. I'll be just like, yeah, I just love the accent. Look at Rochelle's pulling her face. What are you pulling her face?
I'm not. No, I was just thinking about, I was going to say something about TV, and I think growing up, everybody had a very neutral accent. And one of my friends, he's a radio presenter, and he talked to me about how he was brought up to have this neutral accent, and it was really good for him to get on radio stations and things. And they didn't want people who'd got regional accents back in the day, whereas now, like I think one of the first ones, probably Big Brother. He's Geordie, isn't he? The guy who does the voiceover of that, and starting to introduce all these different accents. All of a sudden, people can see themselves like on TV and see themselves in like when they're listening to the radio and things. And I think that has been really important, so that kids can grow up and feel like they've got a place everywhere, and it doesn't matter what accent you've got. You can still do something if you want to, and you don't have to change your accent. And like, it's interesting what you were saying, Elizabeth, about having the elocution lessons. Did I say that right? I feel like I don't know if I pronounced that right. Having any of them, obviously. That's something that I thought was in the past. Like, I've seen it on TV, and like maybe like 40, 50, 60 years ago, and like on Princess Diaries, where she's learning how to be a princess properly and look a certain way. But I wouldn't have thought that was something that was still happening over the last 20 or so years, that people was learning to speak in a different way that was natural to them. Like, fair enough if they've got a speech impediment or something like that, and they need to learn to pronounce the letters, but just because somebody doesn't think that their accent is a well-spoken one, it's crazy.
Wild. Growing up posh in the 90s is a different breed of its own, because in my family and a few of like my friend circles, we weren't allowed to watch TV in English. We had to watch cartoons in French. So we had to like nail the posh British, but also learn French at the same time. I can't speak French these days. I don't know what happened. But for like the first 6 or 7 years, it was all very, very, very regimented. And we even had like calligraphy lessons and shit. It's like Hogwarts coded. I'm telling you, it's nuts. I look back on it, and sometimes I'll tell James like things that I believe to be normal childhood experiences, and he looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, sorry, we weren't all raised in Hogwarts, love." He goes, "Your posh is showing. Put it away."
Yeah. I think, do you know what? I think it's where your parents hung out. Like, I know my parents for sure lived in a space where it was keeping up with the Joneses and stuff. I mean, my mom would deny this to the T and stuff, but it was that whole thing where they would look at other people's children and what they were doing, and before you know it, you're on the same path doing the same thing. So like, all it would take for my mom to hear that there's a summer school, and we were at summer school. So for us, like summer school was a thing.
One-upmanship. It's like the Desperate Housewives suburb vibe, isn't it? Where they're all competing with each other, but then they make their children compete with each other. It's crazy when you think about it. It's wild. Just wanted to play in the mud. That's all I wanted to do.
I just wanted to walk around bare feet. Nothing's changed. But I did. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to walk around, and my parents were mortified. Like, I'd have about 5 pairs of trainers, and I'd go to school in one of them. And as I was walking out, my hair would be probably as bad as it is now. And I'd have my trainers in my hands, and my dad would be like, "Your shoes are meant for wearing." And at 6 years old, I'd look at him like, I don't know what happens. They just came off. And stuff like, I just literally, but also it's really funny because I've always wanted to fit in. So there were kids who couldn't afford shoes to go to school, so they would go to school barefoot because they had to. And in a way, I've always wanted to be normal, which is quite funny, because then at some point the accent, and I guess the accent was normal because I tried to fit in with majority and stuff, because I guess the accent that came from up north or from Cameroon wasn't normal in my head, maybe because the majority of people needed to understand me, so I made myself palatable for others to understand. That's interesting, isn't it? be my own shrink if I tried to be, and what have you. Right. Final words on accents. Who knew we could get 30 minutes out of it?
I know, I was just thinking that it's actually quite an interesting topic, isn't it? That I wouldn't have thought of if you'd not have mentioned it. But there's a lot of depth to it. But I think we just
You're
all
welcome.
need to learn, we just all need to learn to be comfortable in our own skin with our own accent and not try to be someone that we're not, and not be too judgmental of other people and their accents, because it's not a true reflection of what's going on inside.
I think my last words would be, even somebody who was mates with the Cray twins can talk about fine dining in Spain. And I learned a lesson that day to not be so knee-jerky with my initial interpretations of people, shall we say.
But weren't the Cray twins kind of rich anyway, or hung out in rich circles?
They were like gangster. They weren't rich. They were like rich. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, right, rich.
They were like London instead of London rich.
Yeah. Yeah. What would I say about accents? I think we are, the more we travel, the more tolerable we're becoming on accents. So, for example, if you go to Thailand or Vietnam, you get used to the accents there. So when you find someone from there come here, it's not as strange and stuff, and you can be allies for those people when they come in. I think, especially in the corporate world, and I know this is being streamed on LinkedIn. It's been streamed on LinkedIn, right, Rochelle?
Just Facebook, I think. Yeah.
Oh, just Facebook. Okay, so that we'll get it onto LinkedIn. I think it's more also about not underestimating the people that come towards you, because here's the thing: there is a depth of education, and actually, I missed this piece out, so I do apologize if I'm rambling on a bit, but there's a depth of education that gets ignored. It gets ignored. A good example is I know there are a lot of lawyers and doctors from Africa who were never allowed to get jobs just because of the way they speak, and a lot of them are cleaners for a lot of stations. A lot of them are bus drivers, and I know this for a fact because one night years and years ago, before I even lived in London, so we're talking a good long time ago, we stayed overnight in Victoria Station because we were waiting. We had to get like a really early bus, and the cleaners pretty much work all night cleaning the place. And we started talking to some of them, and they're all doctors and lawyers from Nigeria. And it was shocking because they just couldn't get jobs. And a lot of it was that the way they spoke, the way they came across, they weren't deemed intelligent enough. And the wasted skills that we have in this country, I'm talking about the UK, is astronomical. And I think a lot of it is if we just saw people as people rather than where they come from, and judging them by how they speak and how they dress and how they come across and what they cook, and stuff. I know people, especially as an African and stuff, you take African food and make it in the canteen in a company, and people complain about the smell and stuff and the stench, and they make it sound disgusting, but it's like that's that person. It's a delicacy in that person's village and stuff, and all of this. Maybe this is just a whole different topic and stuff. But what I'm saying is, you might be. Is it cutting your nose to spite your face? Is that the right saying? Yeah. And so, yeah. And we just need to be a lot more tolerant, and that goes for all of us, because I think at some point we've all made that judgment, and that's it.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Lots to think about.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth, for does anybody call you Liz?
Yes, the people I get drunk with.
Okay, so Liz. Okay, because every time I want to speak to you, I want to say Liz, and then I feel like, oh my god, I don't think I've ever asked a question, so I feel like I have to say Elizabeth. But
consider Liz, Lizzie, Elizabeth, Oi, you.
Or you, yeah, as long as we're talking to you. It's thank you so much again for stepping in last minute. EJ is, I don't even know where EJ is, but EJ's out of the country.
Yeah,
Rose.
she's on a holiday.
Yeah, we're not jealous at all. And the other Liz is hosting an event in her membership. What's it called? High Connect?
High Net Connect.
High Net Connect. So it was just Rochelle and I decided to email Liz at stupid o'clock to say, hey, do you want to step in? And she's always a pleasure to have. And we will see you next week. Let us know if there's topics you want us to talk about. And we'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.